Shekinah and Your Eyes, or should I say Black Coffee featuring Shekinah, or Shekinah featuring Black Coffee, Your Eyes. Welcome to the Full Circle. Yes, it's Bertha Charuma. I'll be with you for the next 2 hours, taking a look at what's coming up on the show. We're going to start off with Skin Dip with Dr. Judy, wound care during winter and the impact on the skin. And we'll get some insight from our specialist, Dr. Judy Pretorius, biomedical scientist and product development specialist, who will be helping us unpack that. So make sure you can start sending us your voice notes if you'd like to ask questions. That's 061 410 4107, or otherwise you can give us a call on 086 000 2032. Also coming up in the first hour, Michael James, award-winning film director, and we're going to zone into God's Work, a feature film that focuses on homelessness in Durban, following a group of men surviving on the margins. And immediately after that, the South Africa's donor crisis demanding 364 days. We're going to speak to Palesa Mokomele, Head of Community Engagement and Communications, DKMS Africa. The second hour, also looking very, very well, focusing on health, basically. Hashtag health and wellness. Regular checkups are your best medicine. When was the last time you went for a full medical checkup? I know I'm guilty as charged. We'll get to unpack. We'll be talking to Dr. Jessica Blanco, medical doctor and product and clinical risk executive at Dis-Chem. And then the last bit of the show, that is the last 30 minutes, just after 2:30, Blind Love Africa, an animal sanctuary in Makanda, on its community impact. And we're going to be speaking to Philippa Du Toit, founder of Blind Love Africa. That's all coming up in the show.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195, and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
The National Arts Festival is back. South Africa's biggest celebration of the arts is on. From the 26th of June to the 6th of July, Makanda becomes the stage for South Africa's boldest theatre, dance, music, arts, comedy, and more. Experience the creative energy, markets, exhibitions, and many surprises. It's where the country comes to create and the world takes notice. Browse the program and book now at nationalartsfestival.co.za. Own it, celebrate it, be there. Living your best life on the Full Circle.
And the lines are readily available, 086 000 2032, and our WhatsApp line 061 410 4107. And we're starting off with Skin Dip with Dr. Judy Pretorius, and talking about wounds, from burn wounds, cuts, stitches, insect bites, animal bites, and more. And we're talking about wound care and the best practices for treating various types of skin injuries. Dr. Judy, good to have you in the studio. Welcome to the Full Circle.
Thank you. Afternoon to all the listeners as well.
This one is a big one. There is so much that we find on social media, but the fact that you are here and this is your speciality, is going to be quite a fascinating conversation. So let's talk about the different stages of wound healing and how do they vary depending if you're dealing with burn wounds, cuts, stitches, insect bites, or even animal bites.
Well, it's such a beautiful topic for winter, because winter is also known as the burn season. Colder weather conditions really call for us to, bring in elements like heaters, hot water, cooking oil, you name it. So people burn a lot. But if you look at any type of wound, whether it's a burn wound, whether it's an electrical wound, whether it's an insect bite, or just a normal fall, every single wound goes through 4 phases of wound healing, and the typical first phase is what we call the hemostasis phase. So basically what that means is the awakening of the arteries and the veins, that flushes through all sorts of inflammatory markers like cytokines, and I'm using big words now, but it's the awareness of a wound occurred, the hemostasis, the blood flowing phase. And then the second phase would be the inflammation phase. So a lot of inflammatory markers rush to the wound bed to start facilitating healing to take place. And after that, we have what we call a proliferation phase, which basically means that skin cells start to divide from the outside of the wound bed to the inside of the wound bed to start healing. And again, the final phase would be known as the remodeling phase, which means that all the middle layers, component in the middle layer of the skin, like the collagen and elastin fibers, start to restructure and reorganize to ensure that the wound heals as much as it possibly can to its normal state.
And how important is it for you to have blood that clots quicker? Often we've heard that if your blood doesn't clot quick, then you're susceptible to...
Well, then you can be susceptible to infection. Any form of bodily fluids can be a very favorable environment for microbial growth. So the quicker the blood clots, the more protected your body is against any form of external infections. But I mean, what now for all our individuals out there listening to my blood doesn't clot and I'm perhaps a bleeder? And this is where some good science come into play, where you can formulate products out there that really facilitates healing to take place. It kind of create an outer layer film on a wound bed to make sure that even though your condition is different from another person, that no environmental extremities can actually cause bacterial harm or, influence the overall phases of wound healing to take place.
So, as a child, I always used to wonder, that crusting that happens, and you're so tempted to scratch it because it's got a little bit of an itch when
Yes.
your wound is healing. How important is it for one not to tamper with that?
Well, how do you like the following words? A categorical and explicit big no. Don't touch it at all. If it itches, it's busy to heal. And it's also a way of your skin, creating a secondary type of wound dressing for yourselves, like a natural wound dressing to keep things out. And another thing is sometimes if you tamper with that scab and it falls off, then it can actually convert into what we call a hypertrophic or a keloid scar. And it's not uncommon when you tamper with that scab that there's going to be a complexion difference in terms of skin. So on the one part, you will see if I had a accident or a scab on my hand, for instance, and I tamper with a scab prematurely, then there's going to be a pigment difference. I'm going to have a hypopigment, which is it means like it's a lighter part of the skin in comparison to the adjacent areas of the skin. So complexion indifferences is also a big problem for people, especially if you have big wounds over the whole body surface areas.
Now, coming to prevention, how do we then prevent infections and scarring?
Okay. Now, because I'm also in the cosmeceutical space, so for me, it's not just healing a wound. I'm interested, what can I do to heal a wound aesthetically? Is there even a possibility that we can go as close to complete healing? And if we have scars and of wounds and it really looks bad, there are some thousands of wound care products out there, and the first thing that we want to grab is a product that says antibacterial or antimicrobial. And sometimes those ingredients are just too harsh for the phase that wound is in. Because when we have a wound, it's not to say there's already infection there. The first thing that we have to do is we have to find ingredients out there that's going to facilitate wound healing to take place. So I'm all for moist wound healing in comparison to dry wound healing. So for me, it's a case of, spritzing on a typical antimicrobial ingredient like hypochlorous acid, which, by the way, our bodies produce. and putting on a natural, dermatology ointment, which would, in my opinion, be like a primary wound dressing, and then closing the wound with a secondary wound dressing like a plaster. And don't tamper with the wound. Keep it closed for three days to up to a week. But if you clean wounds every day, that's when it can also convert into keloid and hypertrophic scars.
Wow, that's something new. So let's look at the practices then for maintaining skin health while healing from injuries. What should we do and what should we not do?
Okay, what we should not do is and it also depends on what wounds you have. So you mentioned earlier on insect bites. And what about the snake bite, for instance? The first thing that we have to evaluate is we call it the TIMES model. We have a look at how was the tissue infected or affected. Is there any form of infection? Is there any form of microbial growth? Is the wound evolving, what does the surrounding areas of that wound bed look like? So it's what we call a TIMES model. And then based on that, we can go choose some wound care products. But for me, a good fit would be a topical ointment that you can have at home that can be fairly inexpensive. Things like medicinal honey, zinc, even a little bit of hyaluronic acid, salicylic acid, which is very anti-inflammatory. And you take all of those beautiful ingredients and you put it inside a bottle and you use it as a dermatology application, then you know that it's not going to be too harsh. And some people may say, but Dr. Judy, this sounds very homeopathic. No, it's not, because a wound does not necessarily call for harsh intervention immediately. Like you get ingredients such as chlorhexidine, and if you apply that on immediately, many people apply things like chlorhexidine and iodine on the wound bed immediately, but later the wound is healed, but then they struggle with a keloid scar. So the more gentler approach you can have, and the higher the concentration of a certain wound care product can be, the higher the osmotic pool would be. Now you're going to ask me, what on earth are you talking about?
Yes, what are you talking about?
Remember when we were in school? We learned about the process of osmosis, and we learned, listen, something goes from a higher concentration to a low concentration through a permeable membrane. And basically, wound care works on the same principle. If there is a toxin involved, like an insect bite or a snake bite or whatever the case may be, or maybe there was a burn wound and some of your fabric, your textile actually burnt into your skin, and you'd like to debride that naturally, like to pull it out of the skin, then you can manipulate the concentration of a wound care product to such an extent where you apply it on the skin and you can remove toxins from the skin by means of the definition of osmosis and diffusion, So it's all clever stuff, but it really does work. And that's why you can treat the wound once and leave it for three days to a week, and you'll start to see aesthetic healing taking place.
So does wound care and skin recovery take longer as we age?
Unfortunately, it does, and there are so many factors that play a role. If you have underlying conditions like diabetes, it's going to be delayed. If a female goes through menopause, there's delayed wound healing. And then there's our smokers out there. I mean, really, they really struggle with delayed wound healing on a different level, especially if you smoke and perhaps you're a diabetic, then you struggle with diabetic lower limb ulcers. Or if you spend a lot of time in the bed, like a hospital bed, you can get sacrum wounds, the bed pressure ulcers. So there are many things that really constitute to the speed of healing. Menopause, smoking, underlying illnesses such as diabetes definitely will delay the healing.
I've got a WhatsApp that just came through. It says, can you please touch on small cuts which often occur on the fingers from yard work, garden work, or basic knife cuts?
Well, especially if it's on your hand, you can see I like to talk with my hands, and hands is part of our public being and how we communicate. So if you have small injuries on your hands, also again, try to find a good dermatology type of application product, ointment, that you can apply on a wound bed, in that particular case, at least twice a day. You don't really have to clean it that harshly. You can even clean the wound with normal salt water. You boil the kettle and you make your own salt water solution, and then you clean your own wounds with a salt water solution, and try to find a very gentle dermatology type of wound care ointment that you can apply twice a day. Or my favorite protocol still remains. Apply the wound protocol or the wound ointment, and then close the wound with a plaster and keep it closed for at least 3 days. Then you're going to see how quickly that wound heals.
Then here we go. This one has got big words. So it says, good afternoon. I want to ask if Helichrysum pendulatum does really heal the wound and prevent infection. Hopefully I've done pronunciation okay.
Well, you get all sorts of external components to facilitate wound healing. But for me, ultimately, the less, I sound counterintuitive, the less intervention there is, mechanical intervention there is with wound bed, on the wound bed, the better. For instance, if a wound produces lots of exudate and transudate, and what is that exactly? That is when a wound produces a lot of moisture. So it looks like it's a lot of moisture. If you typically wrap it with an absorptive dressing, you can see there's a lot of moisture that's being absorbed in a secondary wound dressing. And sometimes it even brings in the intervention of what we call negative wound pressure, where there's a vacuum that sucks off the exudate from the wound bed. But for me, it's a case of removing the exudate and the transudate from a wound bed, and also determining, again, going back to the TIMES model, what type of wound do you have? If it's a highly inflamed wound, then you can see inflammation. Or sometimes people have a necrotic wound. Frostbite would be a typical example, where people's toes and their fingers, because of cold temperatures, actually go into a necrotic state, and you would like to revive the process of, we call it angiogenesis, the birth of new veins and arteries to a particular area. And this is how you can bring in mechanical components to facilitate healing to take place. But for me, a good, powerful, topical application that you close for 3 days to a week, that's still the best.
And I'm speaking to Dr. Judy Pretorius, biomedical scientist and product development specialist. If you'd like to ask questions, you can absolutely do so. You can use our WhatsApp line, send us a voice note, send us a text, whichever you feel comfortable. That's 061 410 4107. Or you can give us a call, 086 000 2032. So, I've come across quite a number of people. Let's say you've got gangrene and you've had to be amputated.
Yes.
What is the best way to maintain?
Okay. Sometimes when you get a very infected wound, I will be honest with you, some of those infected wounds, if a person like that were to walk into the studio right now, you will be able to smell it from quite far. There's a very profound, distinct malodor associated with that. And some of the organisms that actually grow on a wound bed like that is typically your Pseudomonas and your Staphylococcus type of bacteria. But it is true that people, if they have that caliber infection, what type of treatment modalities are available to prevent anything from going into a state of, listen, it's time for an amputation. And sometimes some of that bacteria feeds so much on your own vascularity and your own circulation that the big fight is to control the microbial growth on a different level. So what we then do is we say, okay, let's take a primary dressing again, like an ointment, but then your secondary dressing would typically be something like silver, and back in the olden days, they picked up, when people got infected with all sorts of diseases and so forth, why did the royal family not get sick? why did they not die? And they realized it was because they, as the royals, were exposed to silver. So silver was an indication that, it protects you from certain microbial growth. So it's a good combination of having a typical topical ointment on a wound bed and then closing a wound with silver. And this is typically what they would do with a highly, highly infected wound to make 100% sure that you facilitate healing, and then you have a great impact player on the wound bed, silver, that really makes 100% sure that the wound doesn't spread into what we call a chronic wound, and it doesn't get worse, and perhaps you can even save a certain wound from any form of amputation.
Well, we're going to take a quick break because we're going to news. Ondela is on standby. When we get back, we continue with our conversation, speaking to Dr. Judy Pretorius, and we're talking about Skin Deep and how to take care of your wounds. Thank you. Bertha News headlines. Expert witness in the Mbenenge sexual harassment probe, researcher Lisa Fenton has sought to give clarity of her analysis of the exchanges between Judges Secretary Andy Swamengo and Eastern Cape Judge President Selby Mbenenge. The DA has expressed its commitment to fighting corruption within government. This after the party's member on the Portfolio Committee of Higher Education and Training, Karabo Khachau, laid criminal charges against Higher Education and Training Minister Dr. Nobuhle Nkabane at the Cape Town Central Police Station this morning. And the number of people killed in an explosion at a pharmaceutical plant in southern India yesterday has risen to 37. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
Bertha Charuma on SAFM.
And I've got Dr. Judy Pretorius with me in the studio, and this is your opportunity if you want to ask questions or maybe share some insight or share something that maybe we can learn something from you. Give us a call on 086 000 2032 or send us a WhatsApp, a voice note, make it a minute, and it must be crisp and audible, 061 410 4107. And we're talking about, the different stages of wound healing and how they vary and how you then can take care of them. Or maybe it could be, animal bites, it could be cut, it could be stitches, it could be burn wounds, whatever it is. We are talking about all that on this platform. Okay, coming back, Dr. Judy, we're talking about gangrene and how to look after it. So can one actually tell signs and symptoms way before it becomes a chronic situation, that I think now I'm developing something that is not savory here?
Yes, absolutely. A sudden wound that really progresses has the definition of an acute wound. But if an acute wound struggles to heal and it becomes static, then it can be a chronic wound. And sometimes you will find that certain wounds are infected, but they don't smell as if they are infected, and then there's another form of what we call, let's call it a planktonic type of bacteria that grows on that wound and makes it static, and we typically call these wounds biofilm wounds. There's no odor, but the wound just doesn't want to heal. And to give you an example of some of these wounds are typically also lower limb wounds, diabetic wounds, or sometimes a lot of ladies especially like to go for cosmetic procedures, and they go for a tummy tuck or maybe some breast augmentation surgery and so forth, and they start to see wounds under the breast or on the tummy area that just goes in an absolute static state. It kind of have a bit of a yellowish a color to it, like a vibrant type of color to it. There's no odor, but it's just static, and usually that's indication of a biofilm growing on the wound bed. And that also shows that, perhaps the treatment protocol that you have followed needs to be changed over from just a normal antibacterial treatment protocol to a biofilm containing protocol that needs to be followed. So there are differences. But then I can also say wounds, especially big wounds, don't heal fast. And this is what I've seen so many times, is that people get scared if they have a wound, but it just doesn't want to heal quickly. Certain burn wounds, big burn wounds, even a hot iron wound, or a steam wound can take up to a whole year to heal properly. And so patience is key. And the more people stress, the more delayed wound healing can take place. So the 4 phases that I spoke of earlier on, the hemostasis phase, the inflammation phase, the proliferation phase, and the remodeling phase, can really take up to anything between 12 to 18 months. And people need to be patient, So the pain maybe go away, the redness may be gone, but you can still see that the skin is still trying to remodel and heal, and there's maybe some pigmentation indifferences and so forth. But it really takes a long time for wounds to heal, and people must just be patient and treat their wounds in a patient a treatment protocol, and just make sure that they boost their overall systemic health as well, immunity, and make sure that the healing takes place.
I think let's go to the voice notes and let's hear what is out there.
So, hi, doctor. This is anonymous. This question is a bit embarrassing, but I wanted to ask, how would one eradicate jock itch? Even if you use Tetmasol soap and you use terpene cream, and it gets rid of the jock itch, but after a while it returns and it doesn't itch, but it's just there as a patch. What can you do to just get rid of it ultimately? Thank you, anonymous here.
Okay, so jock itch, I would
Good afternoon. I've got a question for the doctor there. So I have got what I believe is a keloid scar on my lower lip, and that's because I fell when I was around 17, 18. I'm at the moment around my 30s. So the problem is my lip, the lower lip, my right side of the lower lip, it's a bit enlarged, and you can see it. Also, you can feel it when you touch it, that there's a thickness of a keloid scar or the scar. So it's a bit enlarged than the left side of the lip. So I'm wondering what is the option to sort of balance the size of the lip so that they are even, and is perhaps a surgery an option, or there's other ways to deal with it? Thank you.
Okay, I think you can respond to the two.
Okay. So the jock itch is undoubtedly a fungal infection. So I'm going to start with a little bit of a tip when it comes to fungal infections. Is usually jock itch came from like an athlete's foot, a fungal infection on the foot. And how it spreads is, say for instance, you pull up your underpants, and your underpants touches your foot. And then you pull up your underpants or even pants up until, the upper thigh area and so forth. This is how fungal infections actually spread. And that's why we recommend that if you have a fungal infection on your foot, then pull up socks first, or put on socks first before you put on an underpants, so there isn't a spread to the inner thigh areas or the genital areas. So yes, jock itch, fungal infection. Fungal infection, my friends, I can tell you, it's not an easy thing to get rid of. Fungus, the walls of a fungus are very thick. You cannot really kill a fungus that quickly, but if you have, pulled in some topical intervention, it really takes a long time. You actually sometimes have to use some of these ointments 4 to 5 times per day for a whole month before you really start seeing some differences. What I will actually do is go to your doctor and ask your doctor to maybe script you with a oral fungal treatment. Because usually if you are on some oral antifungal treatment, then your results are slightly better. It puts some strain on the liver, unfortunately, but the results would definitely be better. Then we get to our second question, which is a keloid scar on the lip, which is not uncommon, by the way. Many people struggle with keloids on their lip. And sometimes, again, it comes back to the pigmentation indifferences on the lips. So some people will tell you, listen, but I have 2 colors on my lips. And, it's also due to injury and so forth. But if they have a keloid scar, yes, surgery surgery is one of the interventions that you can make use of, but there's a new type of much gentler intervention, semi-invasive, or let's call it rather non-invasive. We call it skin cauterization techniques or a plasma technique that you can make use of, like gentle burning on the keloid itself to flatten the keloid very, very nicely. And this usually facilitates, much more gentler collagen contraction. It flattens the keloid or a hypertrophic scar. And people are quite happy, with the result. You walk around with a scab on the lip maybe for about a week or so, but usually it flattens the keloid on the lip area very, very nicely. It's aesthetically very appealing, and it's not that invasive. Maybe a scab for a week or so, and then off
We're
you
sorted.
go. You sorted.
Let's take one last voice note just before we close.
And again, Betha, can you ask your guest to maybe help your listeners with the type of food that as people should eat whenever we got wounds that are supposed to heal faster? What's the diet for wound healing, Betha?
Okay, diet for wound healing. I would definitely say, guys, please try whatever you can to boost your vitamin D levels. Even if you have to go and get something at the pharmacy, even if it's an over-the-counter type of vitamin D supplement, trust me, vitamin D makes a huge, huge difference. Then, without a doubt, all your vitamin Bs, B3, B6, B9, B12, all of them. Get it in there, and it's really going to facilitate aesthetic healing. And last but not least, collagen. Oral collagen really helps with good wound healing.
That's Dr. Judy Pretorius, biochemical scientist and product development specialist, chatting to us.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195, and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
EFC is live this Thursday. After months of talk,
And you got nothing, bro. Beat someone relevant, then come show me what you got.
the middleweight division's biggest rivalry comes to a dramatic conclusion.
Massive drama here at the main event of EFC. Never seen anything like it. This crowd.
It's Luke Michael versus Shadrach and Sua for the middleweight title, EFC 125. Live from the World Sports Betting Arena this Thursday, July 3rd. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel on DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
A stage awaits, not for applause, but for possibility. For over 40 years, Standard Bank has championed the arts, and at the National Arts Festival, we don't just watch talent rise, we help grow it. Through our Standard Bank Young Artist Winners, raw voices find power, unseen stories take the spotlight, and what begins as a dream grows into a legacy. Join us in Makanda for the festival. Standard Bank, proud lead sponsor of B20 South Africa, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
SAFM is streaming live now on Facebook, YouTube, and X at SAFM Radio. SAFM has signed a code of conduct that is enforced by the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Under the code, we are committed to giving news that is accurate, comment that is fair, and programming that is not harmful, does not amount to hate speech, or contain violence or explicit sex. If you think we are not living up to that code, then you can inform the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. Direct any complaints in writing to the Broadcasting Complaints Commission of South Africa. PO Box 142365. Craig Hall 2024. Fax to 011-326-3198 or an email to bccsa@nabsa.co.za. For more information, please visit www.bccsa.co.za. Bertha Charuma on SAFM.
And if you've just tuned in and caught us halfway, we're speaking skin deep with Dr. Judy Pretorius, and we're talking about wounds from burn wounds, cuts, stitches, insect bites, animal bites, and many, many more, and how to look after those wounds. But otherwise, coming up next in this second segment, hashtag stages, pages, screens, and more. So, the debut feature film God's Work by Durban-based award-winning director Michael James will have its South African premiere at this year's Durban International Film Festival on Sunday, 20th of July. And we are also going to be speaking to Michael James, who is the award-winning film director. But we thought, let's give you a snippet of what you can expect.
How would you describe life on the streets?
Survival of the fittest.
I see countless sleeping bodies.
When I'm on the street, people look through me, and I'm tired of being invisible, you know?
Mina isikhathi kuyisona sona engiyangizizwe ngazuthi ngiyaphila ngoba ngisuke ngiphupha yathusa.
What do you know about God's work?
Ngisibonge ngisithathe mandulo ngikwazi ukuqhubekela phambili.
You can't wake up if you don't fall asleep.
Okanye awucabanga ukuthi ke leli izwe leli uphila kulona ilona lokufikisa kwikusasa.
Sengiyabona futhi amehlo akho khona ukuthile wona.
So, in the heart of Durban, South Africa, crumbling building offers fragile sanctuary to a group of unhoused men surviving on society's margins, blurring the lines between reality and fiction. Now, the film follows, Simpiwe, played by SAFTA award-winning actor Thobani Nzuza, Hostel, Uzalo, Dip City, and his crew as they navigate addiction, poverty, performative politics, and the lure of fleeting fame, with Simpiwe Thobani Nzuza fighting demons only he can see, and moving performances by a strong supporting cast. We've got Mbulelo Khadebe, Omega Mncube, Siya Nxaba, Zenzo Msomi, and Nduduzo Kowa. And the film is a raw exploration of survival, brotherhood, and the human desire to be seen before disappearing. And we thought, let's catch up with the award-winning director, that's Michael James, to help us understand why God's work. Because when you hear God's work, that sounds very huge. But anyway, Michael, good to have you in the studio.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's a real pleasure.
Thank you so much for making time. So when you were filming, or when you came up with a concept, let's go back to the original concept, God's work.
Yeah.
What was going through your mind?
So this was something that I've been thinking about for years, which was the sense of how to make sense of society. It seems as if, as we all know, the inequality, the injustice we see in society seems like it's quite unsurmountable and can't be changed. So I've been thinking about that for 10, 12 years. And then COVID happened. And around that time, I was kind of sent to go and capture some of the work being done amongst the unhoused community in Durban. And it was through those encounters, speaking to individuals, engaging with people whose lived experiences had been predominantly shaped by life on the streets. Out of that space, the story started forming in my head. And I think I went home, this was still during COVID, and I think in a manic 2-week process, I wrote the first draft of the script. It just kind of came out of me. So that's where it came from. It came from this desire to try and understand just all the various ways in which people try and survive the system, and people not only survive but make a space for themselves in the system. Yeah, so that's kind of where it came from.
And from the onset, the God's Works, stands out for its bold vision, emotional depth, and always going to be very fascinating. I mean, just listening to the clip alone, you kind of like, you kind of like get a sense of it. There's emotion that gets invoked.
Yeah.
And it's not just a film about homelessness. I know you've touched on other different aspects of it, the poverty aspect.
Yeah, so the film is very much an exploration of what I'd call perspective. It's a sense of trying to understand the different ways we see each other, and the distance and the connection that is created through the ways in which we see each other. So, the ways in which someone in the middle class might see someone living in an unhoused situation, the way that politicians see people in the middle class or people in unhoused situations. All of these perspectives change the ways that we relate to each other. So the film explores that. It explores the performance that happens that, when we're in front of the gaze of someone else, whether the gaze might be a camera, whether the gaze might be a politician, whether the gaze might be a brother, a friend, the ghost of a relative. Yeah.
Michael, sorry, can I just interject? I just need to play my commercials and we'll be back quickly.
A stage awaits. Not for applause, but for possibility. For over 40 years, Standard Bank has championed the arts. And at the National Arts Festival, we don't just watch talent rise, we help grow it. Through our Standard Bank Young Artist Winners, raw voices find power, unseen stories take the spotlight, and what begins as a dream grows into a legacy. Join us in Makhanda for the festival. Standard Bank, proud lead sponsor of B20 South Africa, an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m.
Okay, so what then is the ultimatum?
The ultimatum is that the president must swipe in front of his own door because there's a lot of dirt in front of his own door. In the ANC, we've got ministers there that has been implicated in the Zondo Commission report, ministers that are implicated in fraud and corruption charges. So the DA's demand for ultimatum is that the president must fire the people in his own cabinet that face charges like this. People with the like of Simelane and Ntshavheni.
DA's national spokesperson, Billy Ocampo.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM. Find the podcast at safm.co.za. Stages, pages, screens, and more on The Full Circle.
And I'm speaking to Michael James, award-winning film director. We're talking about God's Work, and this is by Durban-based award-winning director, and it's going to premiere at this year's Durban International Film Festival on Sunday, 20th of July. Welcome back, Michael. I do beg your pardon. My screen there was pushing me to play the commercials.
No problem. I understand.
So, what is your intention? What would you like anyone who's going to experience your work to take away from your work?
I think the greatest intention would be to create a sense of empathy. I think it's very easy to create something that we might call sympathy, to make someone feel sorry for, seeing something on screen, eliciting some kind of emotion. But empathy is a bit different. I think empathy requires something from the audience. There's a responsibility about the way in which not only you feel when watching the film, but the life that you lead in the world outside of the cinema gets challenged. And I think that's what empathy is so powerful about. But for certain, God's Work the intention is to create empathy.
And for more information, where do we go?
We have our website, the God's Work to Film, all the social media accounts, Instagram and Facebook, and obviously the Durban Film Festival is advertising the film quite extensively as well.
Michael James, award-winning film director, and we're talking about God's Work. Thank you so much for joining us on The Full Circle, and have yourself a good one.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Bye for now.
Do great solutions start with good conversation? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. Living your best life on The Full Circle.
And coming up, talking to Palesa Mokomele, Head of Community Engagement and Communications, DKMS Africa. South Africa's donor crisis demanding 364 days. So as Mandela Day approaches, a corporate South Africa prepares for the annual routine, 67 minutes of service, feel-good social media posts, and the collective sense that business is contributing to social change. But what happens on 19 July? Mandela Day stirs hearts and headlines, but complex social challenges won't be solved in 67 minutes. You and I know that. What's needed is consistency. Consistency throughout the year, engagement that addresses root causes. Fortunately, corporate South Africa is already, evolving. They are getting somewhere. But let me introduce our guest so that we really get to delve into, what exactly is expected. Palesa Mokomele, good afternoon and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Bertha.
And thank you for making time. So why 67 minutes won't fix South Africa's stem cell donor gap?
Well, because the gap that exists needs consistency in the sense that it's ongoing work. It's work that doesn't have a start and stop. People's health is changing on a daily basis. And people need to, I think we all need to realize that we are the ones that can save ourselves. And therefore, the one day is obviously a very emotional for us as South Africans. But we do know that our social challenges are beyond just the one day, which is Mandela Day, and that it's 365 days of consistently working on our country and on ourselves.
And what most people get wrong about stem cell donation is very, very complex. What would be the one thing you would share that can really stand out so that we understand what is expected?
So I think the critical thing is that people have a more likely chance of getting a matching stem cell donor from someone of their own ethnic group. So we are black people. South Africa is a majority black country, but our demographics on the stem cell registry don't reflect that. So we have few black people on the registry. I think we have few brown people generally represented. And this is something that we need to really get right. Patients can only find a match from someone of their own ethnic group, and that's the basic fact of it.
And looking just at the percentages where it says DKMS Africa Registry has grown, more diverse, 38% black, 45% white, 9% colored, and 8% Asian donors. May potential donors don't know where to sign up. And this is another issue because we don't know where to go. We don't know where to find more information.
So information has been made available by DKMS and the amazing partners and personalities and organizations that have joined our cause. So people who want to get more information can go onto our website, which is dkmsafrica.org. You can also follow us on social media platforms. And also don't feel shy to reach out to us to come and address your church or your school or your stokvel. We are available to do that because we know that without the necessary education that meets people at the level at which they are at, we are not going to be able to overcome the challenges that we face in stem cell transplantation.
And how can businesses also play their role?
We've been extremely fortunate to have had amazing campaigns with different businesses, including Afrocentric, Sanlam, and that entire group. So that's been amazing. We do need more corporate drives. So for businesses to invite us to address their staff who are parents, who are aunts and uncles, and who need this critical information. We also do need funding so that we can continue to do the work that we do, and also that we can assist patients with getting the transplant done. So these are the two critical points that businesses can meet us at.
That's Palesa Mokomele, Head of Community Engagement and Communications, DKMS Africa, chatting to us. Thank you so much, Palesa. And once again, racial mismatch in donor registry affects survival rates. So whatever nationality, not nationality, color or, ethnic background, you have to just play a role so that you can save that one life. Thank you so much, Palesa, and have yourself a good one.
Thanks very much for having me.
And bye-bye for now. It is 2. Ondela is on standby with the news.
Thank you, Bertha. Top stories at 2. Expert witness in Benenge case gives clarity on her analysis, and DA commits to fighting crime within government. For SAFM News, I am Ondela Mbana, and a very good day. Expert witness in the Benenge sexual harassment probe, researcher Lisa Fenton, has sought to give clarity of her analysis of the exchanges between Judges Secretary Andiswa Mengo and Eastern Cape Judge President Selby Benenge. Fenton says her analysis does not seek to patronize Mengo, but rather it illustrates the power dynamics involved when the accused is in a position of authority. Fenton, who has worked in the field of violence against women since 1991, is currently under cross-examination in the landmark probe upon being probed on her perceived sympathetic stance that seeks to patronize the complainant and reduce her to a child in exchanges between the pair. Fenton said the following.
I think you're misinterpreting what I mean when I say childlike. And I repeat again that I'm talking about a position in relation to the judge. I'm not talking about somebody who's actually a child, should be thought of as a child. It's more like positions of authority. It's not about people's mental capacity. It's not about their abilities. It's about the degree of respect or deference you are expected to show somebody when you are positioned in a particular role. It's not that that person is a child and you treat them as a child.
The DA has expressed its commitment to fighting corruption within government. This after the party's member on the Portfolio Committee of Higher Education and Training, Karabo Khachau, laid criminal charges against Higher Education and Training Minister Dr. Nobuhle Ngabane at the Cape Town Central Police Station this morning. The party has accused Ngabane of misconduct and a lack of transparency in the appointment of SETA board chairpersons. It also claims that Ngabane misled Parliament about the formation of an independent panel in the appointments of the ANC-linked individuals. Khachau was addressing the media.
When President Ramaphosa doesn't want to act against corruption within his own cabinet, the Democratic Alliance will dollar what it must to make sure that people are brought to book. We are here today to make sure that our fight against corruption is consistently heard. And what makes the Democratic Alliance extra happy is knowing that we're not fighting alone. We're fighting alongside South Africans who've long since also said that they do not want Nobuhle Ngabane in cabinet anymore. Not only has she shown little to no integrity, but we cannot trust her with the people's money at all.
The South African National Defence Force Legal Services representative, Advocate Masilo Lekulwana, says he is not in a position to delay proceedings in the inquest into the deaths of the Craddock Four in the High Court in Gqeberha. This after a brief appearance in the court today. The SANDF was subpoenaed to appear to account for the military's refusal to fund the legal representation for the former Lieutenant General Christopher Pierre Joffel van der Westhuizen. Likulwana said this case had been escalated to the High Court in Pretoria, where the reasons for the refusal were stated. He says Van der Westhuizen is, however, not taking any steps to expedite the matter. The inquest that seeks to establish who was responsible for the murder of the Klerok 4, Matthew Koniwe, Fort Kalata, Sparrow Mkhondo and Sicelo Mhlawuli remains adjourned until the 4th of October. The Pretoria Specialized Commercial Crimes Court has sentenced former Human Resources Manager at the New Hope School to 6 years imprisonment for fraud. Christopher Fisher had defrauded the school for learners with special needs of 6 million rand. He had faced 11 counts of fraud committed between July 2018 and April 2022. Fisher's duties included managing payments of staff that the school governing body had employed. The National Prosecuting Authority's Lumgama Anjana.
The man committed the offences by opening different bank accounts in his name and fraudulently making payments to ghost employees. With the proceeds of crime, he bought a VW Golf GTI valued at 150,000 rand and further fed his gambling addiction. In court, he asked for a non-custodial sentence. However, the NPA argued for a sentence of direct imprisonment.
The number of people killed in an explosion at a pharmaceutical plant in southern India yesterday has risen to 37. Officials say the blast took place in a reactor unit of the factory in the city of Hyderabad. The BBC's Anbarasan Edrijan reports.
Dozens of workers were in the factory building in the southern state of Telangana when there was an explosion. Parts of the building were reduced to rubble by the blast. Rescuers recovered several bodies from the debris overnight. Many of the workers were migrants from states like Jharkhand, Odisha and Bihar. Some of the wounded are said to be in a critical condition and reports say several people are still missing. The company that runs the plant says it has halted operations at the site for 3 months. Industrial disasters are common in India, with experts blaming poor planning and lax enforcement of safety rules.
Recapping the top story, expert witness in the Benenge sexual harassment probe, researcher Lisa Fenton has sought to give clarity of her analysis of the exchanges between Judges Secretary Andy Swamengo and Eastern Cape Judge President Selby Benenge. I'm Mondela Mbana for SFM News Headlines at 2:30.
The Teranga Lionesses know the importance of a win in their WAFCON opener. However, the Congolese also have their undivided attention on 3 points. This is the Women's Africa Cup of Nations Morocco 2024. Do not miss out on Senegal versus Democratic Republic of Congo this Sunday, 6 July at 3:30 p.m. Streaming live on SABC Plus and SABC Sport DTT Channel 4. Then at 4 p.m. on S3 and SABC radio stations. Where Africa competes, South Africa connects. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The National Arts Festival is back. South Africa's biggest celebration of the arts is on. From the 26th of June to the 6th of July, Makhanda becomes the stage for South Africa's boldest theatre, dance, music, arts, comedy, and more. Experience the creative energy, markets, exhibitions, and many surprises. It's where the country comes to create and the world takes notice. Browse the program and book now at nationalartsfestival.co.za. Own it, celebrate it, be there.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 105 FM in Polokwane.
You are listening to The Full Circle.
Trezon, Sophia Nzao, Wale Wale. There's just a nice Afro-centric beat going on there. Beautiful song. Hashtag health and wellness. Regular checkups are your best medicine. When was the last time you went for a full medical checkup where they check your heart, you check everything, and you know that you are good to go? Chances are maybe last year, this year, last month. Well, if you've been this year, good for you. But if you haven't, I think this is something you need to now start considering. So when it comes to our health, many of us tend to wait until our bodies send strong signals that something is very wrong. It's common to ignore a headache for days, only seeking medical help when symptoms escalate, like blurred vision, extreme fatigue, without understanding that our bodies often give subtle warnings that sometimes something is deeply wrong and something may be happening. And by the time we truly feel unwell, the issue could already be very serious. So this afternoon, we're discussing the critical importance of preventative care and its role in safeguarding our long-term well-being. And Dr. Jessica Blanco, medical doctor and product and clinical risk executive at Dis-Chem, is joining us online. And maybe you would also like to ask questions, maybe engage, join the conversation. You can always do that. Give us a call on 086 000 2032 or send us a voice note, a WhatsApp on 061 410 4107. Dr. Jessica, good afternoon and welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, Bertha. Thank you so much for having me.
I am guilty as charged. I have not been for a full medical checkup in the longest of time. But from today onwards, I think I'm going to take it a little bit more seriously. So the importance of screening before symptoms, what really needs to happen? How many times should actually one go for a medical checkup and for screenings, and which ones are the most important screenings?
So it does depend on a couple of different factors. Things like age, your gender, your individual risk factors, whether there are certain diseases present in your family or not. So those things all do come into account. But as a general rule, people who are over the age of about 30 years old should consider doing a general checkup at least once a year, even if they are, otherwise healthy. And then people who have got other risk factors, people who are smokers, people who may be overweight, people who've got a history of heart disease in their family or cancer in their family, for example, those people may need to consider additional tests and maybe start earlier or do them more frequently. And then people who are living with chronic diseases, who have already been diagnosed, there are certain tests that need to be performed more regularly and at a different frequency, which is also important to consider. So it is slightly individualized, but everyone should be going for a checkup at least once a year, even if they feel perfectly fine.
So often lately, and this is something just from my own observation, and I'm sure a couple of people also have observed this. These are conversations we have as we sit around, where you find that a lot of young people are now suffering from stroke or a heart attack. Should we be going for some of these checkups at the beginning of the year, middle of the year? What should we do?
So definitely, I think the point you're raising about, things like strokes and heart attacks occurring even at younger ages is extremely valid. And there's a couple of different reasons for that, but it really points to the kind of lifestyles that we live, the way that we tend to work and drive around. We're sitting a lot. We're not walking around enough. We're not exercising. The diets that we eat, the stress levels that we face for various different reasons, that's all driving that kind of patterns that we're seeing. And what it does mean is that it really is important not to delay starting to do these screening tests. If you think about it, the kind of things that we're talking about, like a stroke or a heart attack, the things that are happening in our bodies to lead to that outcome, those are things that start early and then they progress over many, many years. So if the heart attack happens, it's not to say that it was just, a week ago that something started taking place. That process has been ongoing in your body for many, many years. And without doing screenings without going for these tests, that remains unknown, and you end up doing nothing about it. So there are, tests that are available that can help us to understand whether that process is taking place or not, how advanced it is, whether it's something that we need to intervene on. So those are part of the reasons why starting screenings early on is so important, because we're not trying to pick up something right before something serious happens. We're trying to understand, where we are in the process of this progressive thing happening, which is really important. So I think it talks to the fact that we need to understand things like our blood pressures, our cholesterol levels, our glucose levels, and then once we have that understanding, it puts us in a position of power where we can then do something about it. There's a saying, that you can't manage what you can't measure, and ultimately that is what's playing out here. If you haven't done the test, you don't know where you stand, and it means that you end up ignoring it ultimately.
I'm speaking to Dr. Jessica Blanco, medical doctor and product and clinical risk executive at Dis-Chem, and we're talking about, be preventative rather. Preventative care and protecting your long-term well-being is essential, less expensive for living healthier, longer and more fulfilling lives. And when we come back from the small break, if you would like to share with us, maybe you would like to ask questions, maybe you've just been going through something, or maybe you do plan to go for your checkups and you want to find out which ones are the most important, you can always give us a call or send us a voice note on 061 410 4107 or give us a call on 086 000 2032. Let's take a small break. We'll be back.
If you think you cannot afford a lawyer, think again. Clientele Legal has made professional legal services affordable for you. Whether it's a civil, criminal, or labor-related matter, we have a nationwide panel of attorneys standing by to assist you. SMS SAFM to 32195. That's SAFM to 32195 and we'll call you back. Clientele General is a licensed non-life insurer and an authorized FSP. Standard rates and terms and conditions apply.
This week on Off-Pitch Goals, Kaizer Chiefs greats and Bafana Bafana 2010 FIFA World Cup stars René Solonyane and Siphiwe Chabalala take on the food and beverage industry. The legendary duo own one of Soweto's most vibrant hangout spots and invite us to be the tastemakers of the inner workings of their establishment. Streaming on SABC Plus and SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4 on Saturday, 5 July at 8:30 p.m. Off-Pitch Goals, where we showcase how the stars score in business. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
For the love of the game.
The National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
Herman Mashaba's response is so interesting, and he said, John, when I was the mayor of the city of Joburg, I fired 3 DA Mako members for corruption. The party kept them as councillors. South Africa is not going to succeed in fighting corruption for as long as we apply double standards. Corruption is
no
corruption.
Such thing. The whole country knows Ashraf. You can't trust anything Herman Mashaba says. One day, he's a flip-flopper of plastic notes. If there's one politician in this country who's renowned for being a flip-flopper, who's unable to stay true to any public comment without changing it the next second, it is Herman Mashaba.
Karabo Khaukau, the DA national spokesperson.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM. Find the podcast at safm.co.za.
Stay on top of all meaningful, top trending stories right here on SAFM. Leading the conversation.
Bertha Charuma on SAFM.
And we're focusing on health and wellness. Regular checkups are very, very pivotal, safeguarding your long-term well-being. And on the line, I've got Dr. Jessica Blanco, medical doctor and product and clinical risk executive at Dis-Chem. Good to have you back, Doc. So let's talk about, the many serious health conditions. Maybe let's break them down here. Starting off, if it is a heart disease, are there any signs and symptoms? And before we even get to signs and symptoms, of course, you've got to go for your screening so that you check that all your arteries are intact. What should one look out for?
So this is an important question, really, for the reason that often, and in the early stages, there are no symptoms. So things like high blood pressure and high cholesterol, you may have heard them be referred to before as the silent killers. And the reason for that name is that there can be a very long period of time where someone is living with these conditions and feels absolutely normal, which means you don't notice anything. There's nothing, kind of prompting a visit to the doctor. And you end up walking around, living your life with these things taking place, and it's damaging your arteries. So when you are living with high blood pressure for years, the high pressure within your blood vessels, it causes damage, and the disease progresses and progresses. And that can all happen with no symptoms. And when you do start feeling symptoms, it means that the degree of damage can already be quite advanced. So I think as a first point, that is really, really important. It means that we can't, be under the impression that just because I'm feeling fine, I don't need to do anything. Screenings are very, very important either way. But in terms of the kind of symptoms that you might then start to feel as things have progressed, that usually relates to, the level of activity that you're able to do without, feeling very out of breath. So if you think about it, when you're sitting down in your chair and you're not moving around, your heart's got to work at a certain level, and it's generally not working very hard. As you get up and you walk, your heart's got to work a little bit harder. As you start running, your heart's got to work even harder. And as you develop issues with your heart and your blood vessels, the level of activity that you're able to sustain becomes less and less. So you may find running far more difficult. Over time, you might find walking becomes even more difficult. And when heart disease is very advanced, even sitting at rest, you're not able to do without feeling out of breath or without feeling tired. So that is a really important sign. Not being able to sleep flat on your back or lie down without struggling to breathe is also important. And then things like general fatigue as well. I know it's a vague sort of symptom, but if you're feeling more tired than usual and you can't think of why, that's also an important reason to go and get checked out.
And for heart conditions, you can just go to your general GP and that's fine.
Absolutely. And I mean, there are various places that you can kind of start. Your GP is definitely an option. It is also a good option to consider visiting a nurse who can run some of the initial tests, and then depending on those results, you can be referred to a doctor if necessary. Even, chatting to your pharmacist, there's advice that they can give you. There's some insight that they can give you if you're unsure and you've got a couple of questions. But, all of those would be a good starting point. And then depending on the outcome of those discussions or the outcome of those tests, you can then be referred if necessary.
Then let's take a look at diabetes. Then you've got diabetes 1 and diabetes 2. When does one go and check? I know that, like we highlighted at the beginning, that it should be as regular as possible, maybe once a year?
Yeah, so once a year is generally, what is recommended. But that would be for someone where there are no, really, big risk factors that you can identify. For someone who's got a family history of diabetes, and particularly where the onset of diabetes was at a younger age in their family members, that becomes a very important point. Someone who is overweight, who smokes, someone who is already diagnosed with other risk factors like high blood pressure and high cholesterol, for that individual, checking their blood sugar more than once a year becomes very important, because all of these things just really, add to the picture around risk of things like heart attack and stroke. And when all of those things are present, it means that the importance of you picking up the presence of diabetes early is even higher. So all of those things, I mean, even someone who is, aware of the fact that they really don't do a lot of physical activity, they live a very sedentary lifestyle, or someone who follows a poor diet, all of those things increase the likelihood of developing diabetes. So it would be very wise to go for tests more frequently than once a year, but at the very least, once a year would be advised.
And then we've got cancer. Now we've got variants, so many variants of cancer, and they develop, slightly slower and over a long period of time. When should we go and check? How many times should we check?
So you're right. Cancer becomes a bit more of a complicated topic. And there are so many different types of cancer, even for a particular type of cancer, like lung cancer, for example. There's many different variants. Some of them develop slowly, some of them develop much more quickly and are more aggressive. And there are so many different risk factors as well. We also only have specific screening tests for certain types of cancer. So unfortunately, as things are today, there isn't really, kind of a general screening you can do for all types of cancers. And there's a lot of, work being done in this field and a lot of advances that are taking place. But unfortunately, for, the average person, there isn't really the opportunity to go and do just one test that tells you, you're at risk of this cancer, not this one. It's just not available. But what we do have are, general guidelines and recommendations for screening for specific types of cancers at certain, above certain age levels and for certain genders, that we know that we've got tests where the outcome of the test is relatively reliable and it gives us a benefit in terms of doing the screening. So that would generally be for things like in males, prostate cancer. So males over the age of 45, there are blood tests that can be done, and there's also physical examinations that can be done to help to pick up the risk there. For both males and females, screening for colorectal cancer is also advised, especially in older ages. And then for females, going for pap smears and HPV screenings, those are important for picking up the risk of cervical cancer. And then obviously breast cancer being a big one, where physical examinations can also be performed to pick up the risk. And then obviously things like mammograms as well are important there. So those would be really some of the big ones that people can do screenings for, and there's recommended tests and recommended frequency of testing based on your age. And those would be, very, very common cancers that it's a good idea to kind of do the screening there. Again, if there's a history of any of those cancers in your family, it's even more important. Beyond that, it does become a little bit difficult in terms of, trying to find specific screening tests for all the other different types of cancers. But those would be the really big ones.
That's Dr. Jessica Blanco joining us this afternoon, medical doctor and product and clinical risk executive at Dis-Chem. Thank you so much for joining us. But maybe for more information, for someone who's listening to you and I, is there somewhere where we can get more info, Doc?
Yes, absolutely. So first of all, thank you so much for having me. I really think it's such an important topic. If you are looking for any more information, there is, the Dis-Chem website is a place that you can visit where there's information, and there's always the opportunity to visit any of our clinics. Our nurses in our in-store clinics are, all trained in exactly what we've been speaking about today, and are really trying to drive this message in every piece of work that they do as well. Like I said, it's really important, and at the time in our country where this is becoming even more so. So I'd highly recommend visiting one of our nurses if there are any other questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Jessica. Thank you. Have yourself a good one. Just go on after 2:30. Ondela is on standby with headlines.
Thank you, Bertha. The news headlines. The third technical meeting of the G20 on the empowerment of women is underway at Kruger National Park in Mpumalanga. Expert witness in the Mbenenge sexual harassment probe, researcher Lisa Vetten has sought to give clarity of her analysis of the exchanges between Judges Secretary Andiswa Mengwe and Eastern Cape Judge President Selby Mbenenge. And U.S. President Donald Trump's former advisor Elon Musk has stepped up his criticism of the president's tax and spending bill as senators continue to vote on amendments. A full update follows at the top of the hour.
The National Pulse, weekdays 3 to 6 p.m.
What about the many high-profile DA leaders that are not part of your party any longer? I'm looking at Musi Maimane, Phumzile van Dam, Lindiwe Mazibuko, Makashule Ghana, Herman Mashaba. For whatever reason, could be many of what we spoke about above before, but they're gone. What does that say about the DA's ability to hold on to these leaders that may well be the type of leaders that you would need to be able to govern the country?
Far more black leaders have come to our party and grown up through the party than have ever left our party. So you're not mentioning Sally Malaxi, you're not mentioning Sally Simanga, you're not mentioning Sibiru Wahube, you're not mentioning any of those, because nobody knows the name of any black leader in the DA because they're considered to be sellout by the media, and they only become famous when they leave the DA.
Alan Ziller, chairperson of the DA's Federal Council.
Ashraf Garda on SAFM. Who says talking never solves anything? SAFM, leading the conversations that move us. This program is brought to you by SABC Education, enriching minds, enriching lives.
Hello friends, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Kids Corner. Today we're talking about something really important, being helpful at home. What are some of the things that your parents or guardians depend on you to do? Maybe it's making your bed, helping with dishes, or looking after your little brother or sister. Do you enjoy doing those things, or you sometimes wish your parents could just do them on their own? And why do you think it's important to be helpful, especially at home? Let's hear from some of our friends while you think about your own answers and share them with someone next to you.
My name is Kosi Totatambani. I am 8 years old. My parents depend on me to teach my baby sisters how to behave. Yes, I do enjoy it because it helps my parents a lot. Yes, I would like them to do it themselves. But since it's easy for them, I'll do it because I want to make their lives easy. It's very important to help at home because we make our parents' lives easier. And it also shows respect because of what we are doing. Thank you everybody for listening.
Good day, my name is Orero Ramtao and I'm 11 years old and I attend school at Providence Academy, and I'm here to tell you what my parents depend on me. My parents always depend on me saying I must wash the dishes, and to be honest I don't really like it, and yes I will totally like them to do it themselves. Eventually I am helping my parents because when she is done cooking it is easy to put food on the table. To be helpful at home it is really important because it is normally being a good kid. Thank you.
Greetings everyone, my name is Blessing. I am 11 years old. My parents depend on me to do things like house chores. I enjoy doing these things because it feels good to help. I don't want my parents to do things themselves because they would become very tired. It's important to be helpful at home because it shows I care and it makes everything look clean. Thank you.
My name is Monkala Shauke. I am 9 years old and I am in grade 3. My parents depend on me to bath myself and make myself breakfast, which is my favorite thing to do in the morning. Yes, I enjoy doing it because I get to choose what I want to have for breakfast. No, I would not want them to do those things themselves because it helps me to learn to do things on my own. It's important to be helpful at home because it teaches me that when I grow up, it won't be hard to do those things myself. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.
Hi guys, my name is Toby Namate. I'm in grade 3, 9 years old, and I learn Observatory East Primary School. What do your parents expect you to do at home? Well, my parents expect me to wash dishes and drying them, fold clothes, clean the house, taking clothes out of the washing machine and hanging them. I enjoy doing the tasks given to me because it makes me responsible. I wouldn't want them to do most of the things. It's a way of them teaching me, and I appreciate that also cleanliness is next to godliness. It is important to be helpful at home because it teaches valuable life skills and contributes to a more positive and organized living environment. It also fosters a sense of teamwork. Bye! Good day, friends. My name is Sisedi Mutau, and I go to Tiny Christian School. I'm 11 years old. Some of the things my parents depend on me to do is to wash the dishes and clean my room. I don't always enjoy the things my parents depend on me to do, but I would not want them to do it themselves because they sometimes come home tired, and it's better if they find the house clean. It's important because
because my area can be clean, it avoids conflict at home and other than area environment. Thank you very much, friends. Enjoy your holidays. Bye.
Hi, my name is Shante Mhla. I am 11 years old and I go to Parktown Public School. My parents depend on me to take care of my baby brother. Yes, making sure my brother is at care makes me at ease. No, I feel that they have a lot of things to do, but they still care and they are at ease when they know that their children are safe. It's important to be helpful, especially at home. Being helpful at home makes sure that you're not being bullied or scared of anything. You can tell your parents each and everything what you would like or what is happening. So I feel that lying and not being helpful is not a nice way to appreciate your parents. So being helpful and respectful is a lot of helpful. Thank you.
Hello everybody, my name is Andani Wumban. I am 6 years old, and some of the things that my parents depend on me to get done is that every day when I come back from school, I polish my shoes. After polishing my shoes, if my t-shirt is dirty, I'll take my t-shirt and wash my socks and my t-shirt. And I take my lunch box and my lunch bag, I wash them as well. After doing everything, I'll sit down, I write my homeworks. After writing my homework, I'll make sure the couch is clean and make sure that the sitting room is clean so that when she comes back from work, everything will be in order. And yes, I enjoy doing the things that my parents depend on me to get done. Because when I do things by myself, it shows that I'm growing. And it's teaching me to be responsible for myself. I think it's important to help at home because some of the times we are together and when she comes back from work, she gets tired, so I must help her. I'll be learning to do things by my own. Even when she's not around, I can do everything by myself. I enjoy doing new things every day, what she teaches me. It is also important because even when I visit to my family, I'll be able to take care of myself. Things that my mom told me. I hope everyone enjoy listening to my story. Thank you.
My name is Duria Tsangendlovu and I go to Mokoli House School. I would say yes, I am helpful. If I could help around my community, I would start a children's club to try and give kids a fun time to feel free. Yes, I do think that it is a good thing for children to be helpful at home and around their community because they can make many people happy with their contributions. At home, you can always help out by cooking, cleaning, or taking care of something else for someone in your house. In your community, neighbors might need help fixing something that you just know how to fix.
My name is Lorraine Moyo. Yes, I am so very, very helpful. If I were to do something to help in the community, is to help around the environment, is to plant food, to pick up litter, and all those sort of things so that we can help our environment. I think it is very helpful for people to help in the community because it just helps bring people to get together and to show that you care about your town, your city, your environment which you live in. And I think the way people should live at home is to do your chores, and in the community just try and make the environment better. I hope you have a wonderful day today. Thank you for listening to me. Bye.
Thank you, friends. It's always great to hear from you. Have you ever thought about all the things you do that your parents or guardians depend on you for? Maybe it's packing your school bag, feeding the pets, cleaning your room, helping with dishes, or watching over your younger sibling. These little things may seem small, but they really make a big difference. When you take care of the things your family depends on you for, you're not just being helpful, you're showing responsibility. And guess what? That's a big part of growing up. It shows your parents they can trust you, and it also makes the whole family work better as a team. Do you enjoy doing the things your parents count on you for? Some chores can be fun, like watering the garden, while others might feel like hard work. Hello, laundry! But even when it's tough, Being helpful shows love and care. Now, would you want your parents to do everything for you, even things you can already do by yourself? Probably not. Helping gives you a sense of pride. It feels good to know you make a difference. Being helpful at home also teaches us skills we'll need later in life. It shows that we are part of a family, and in a family, everyone plays a role. So the next time you're asked to help out, think of it as your way of giving back to those that love and care for you every day. Helping out at home doesn't just keep your house clean, it keeps the heart of the home happy. I hope from today, you'll be more helpful at home. That's it for today, friends. See you next time.
This program was brought to you by SABC Education. Enriching minds, enriching lives. The Morning Brief.
Do you know why you were fired?
Well, I can only speculate. I received a letter on Wednesday, and that letter didn't provide any explanation, but thanked me for my service and reiterated the President's legal prerogative to appoint and obviously disappoint in this case. But, you know, one of the reasons may very well be that I traveled to the United States earlier this year. I did request permission from the President. After 10 days, I had not received a response, and I undertook to go obviously at risk.
Andrew Whitfield, DA Member of Parliament and also former Deputy Minister of Trade and Industry.
Tulasizwe Simelane on The Morning Brief. Find the podcast at safm.co.za.
Here, there, and everywhere. SAFM 104.3 FM in Rustenburg.
Bertha Charuma on SAFM.
And just to recap what you missed out from the beginning of the show, Skin Deep with Dr. Judy. That was our first conversation, wound care during winter and the impact on the skin. And then we spoke to Michael James, award-winning film director, talking about God's Work, a feature film that focuses on homelessness in Durban, following a group of men surviving on the margins. And also spoke to Palesa Mokomele, head of community engagement and communications, DKMS Africa, South Africa's donor crisis demanding 364 days, and just making us more aware of what you need to do and how you can go about donating. Also, we spoke to Dr. Jessica Blanco, medical doctor and product and clinical risk executive at Dis-Chem, talking about regular checkups, which are so important, and they need to be done as often as you can, because you don't want to find yourself with a situation and then try and navigate, find some help, and yet the situation would have been quite dire. Coming up next now, we're going to be speaking to Philippa du Toit, founder of Blind Love Africa. And what is it all about? Blind Love Africa, an animal sanctuary in Makhanda, on its community impact. So their work is quite interesting, and we can learn a thing or two. I know there was once a situation in the Northwest where we had so many donkeys, and then when it was Mahikeng, and as a province, people were struggling to try and harness the overcrowdedness of donkeys. But here came someone and came up with a concept that really, really works. So when Philippa du Toit moved her non-profit organization, Blind Love Africa, to Makhanda, formerly known as Grahamstown, in 2020, she had no idea the impact her work would have on the community, especially the donkeys, which the small town is famous for. And we get to find out how exactly her work comes in handy. Philippa, good afternoon and welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Bertha. Thanks for having me.
So take us through the work of Blind Love and the impact your work has in the community of Makhanda.
So, as you said, we moved down in 2020. We were up in the Eastern Free State, and up there we had been working with the cart horse communities. Obviously, there's none of that here, and so I was desperate to get going with the donkey owners in Makhanda.
but I didn't know where to start. I mean, where do you begin? It's a new community, different animals, different people. So the first 2 years were quite a struggle, getting to know the owners. And I would just drive around, take photos, chat to them, ask them what their needs were. And then suddenly in I think it was late 2022, we started really connecting with the owners. And in 2023, we were very lucky to receive funding from an organization in Australia, Animal Aid Abroad. And they fund working animals worldwide. So, not just donkeys, horses, camels, oxen, whatever, all working animals. And that has actually allowed us to really start making a difference. So their funding allows us to provide primary health care. So we hold monthly outreaches, and the donkeys that attend, they all get treated for parasites, internal, external, worms, flies, ticks. And then we're replacing harnesses. This is another big thing. All the wounds and injuries that you see on these animals, the majority of the wounds are from ill-fitting old harnesses. And, these owners don't have the resources. They have access to very, very little. So they can't, so you'll see them fixing a harness with a piece of wire or a piece of rope. And this is where we've been, so we hold monthly outreaches now with them. Yeah.
And you trained as an artist. You're also a porter.
Yes, I am. That is supposed to be my job.
How did you become an animal rescuer?
I grew up on a farm, and I always had a pony and a horse, and we were in the Eastern Free State, very close to the Lesotho border. So there was a lot of that was the cart horse community that I actually first started working in. As a child, we would have to drive to Bloem, and we would go through to Barnshu, and I would see these hard-working horses, and it was just, I think my first pony was actually, he pulled a cart in Lesotho, and then we also had another pony on the farm as children, and she had also been a cart horse in Barnshu. And then when the organization got going, the community work there took off, which was great.
Well, we are coming to Makhanda for the Arts Festival, but I want to talk about the Donkey Day, which is a well-known day in Makhanda. What happens on this particular day, and how does it bring the community together?
That was something that was actually started by Annerie Vormerans. She was the sheriff of the court. And, right in the beginning when I first arrived, everyone was speaking about it. People would hear what I was doing, and then they would say, "Oh, have you heard about Mrs. Vormerans?" And so I got to hear what she had been doing over the years. And then the owners themselves, they were also they really valued her. Sadly, I think she passed away in 2019. I could be 2020. And the owners had always said, we need to get this donkey carnival going. Mrs. Vormerans used to do the donkey carnival, and I think she did it for a couple of decades. She started the Makana Donkey Association in 1994, and she's been doing that carnival every year. So this year we decided, let's try it.
So I see that on the day you'll be basically just one of the things that you're going to be doing. Hooves getting trimmed, carts repaired, anything else if someone is in the peripheries of Makhanda and they would like to bring about their work, or maybe just to come and learn something. Maybe if you could just share.
That we actually have just had it. The Donkey Day was on the 7th of June.
Oh, beg your pardon.
Yes, it's just passed. But as you say, what we did, we had a carpenter there. We had a couple of carpenters repairing carts. Some of the carts they rebuilt from scratch. We had a farrier there doing hooves. We had 2 vets there. So all the donkeys were checked, and they all got rabies shots. We had the girls from DSG, thanks to Lucy Rutherford, and the Trek girl she persisted and she persevered. And so we had all the girls from DSG, and they raised funds, and the donkeys got buckets and halters and hoof picks and food. It was like a spa day for the donkeys. And then Lucy's parents also very kindly, they're farmers in the area, and they donated braai meat and wors, and they bride, so the owners had food, cool drinks. It was just a nice day, and we actually had members of the community popping in, members that had remembered it from before, with Mrs. Vormerans coming and saying they were so glad it was up and running again.
And I also see that Blind Love has expanded over the last 20 years. And, you've got programs in Tabanchu, Cut Horse Outreach Program, the Grahamstown or Makanda Working Donkey Outreach Program, Heard by a Horse, Sanctuary Horses and Donkeys. Just so that maybe you get assistance, what would you like the general public to know, and where do they go if they want to assist?
You were talking earlier about the donkey population in Northwest, and I just hope got time to quickly touch on that.
Yes, absolutely.
Because the donkey population in Grahamstown, sadly, over the years, I think we're looking at sort of since the early 19th century, we've had working donkeys roaming free and no sterilization. So their population is also absolutely out of control. And it's just recently, it's starting to actually cause quite a lot of tension in the town. So we've been looking at ways of we need to step in and try and control this population, because there's been threats made to round up and remove, and those donkeys will end up being sold for slaughter, and the owners will lose them, or into the illegal donkey skin trade. So together with Dr. Annie Mears, we've actually come up with a very innovative, first of its kind pilot project. And what it is, we're going to be targeting the male donkeys, and we're going to be injecting them with a contraceptive injection. So it's very humane, and it lasts 6 months. And if we can do this before each breeding season, do like 400 donkeys, we're hoping to really sort of bring the population down to a stable, manageable population, and encourage owners to, they don't need 10, 20 donkeys, have 5 and look after them and breed selectively. So we need support. We want the public to get behind that so that we don't lose those donkeys,
So
this is,
so
critical.
as I'm sitting and talking to you right now, right? And maybe it's not the best comparison, but I'm just going to use it nonetheless. When we look at horses are very pricey. They are almost like from the same family, but not exactly. Horses are very pricey and precious. And it had to take somebody who decided they're going to be precious, and this is how we're going to treat them, and this is how we're going to utilize them. Why is it that we struggle with donkeys? Isn't there a way to find their value and find means and ways to utilize them in a manner that is positive, so that we don't have to eliminate?
I think this is the thing. I think people, especially in Grahamstown, I think that donkeys now are just being blamed for a lot of the problems happening in the town. If there's rubbish on the streets, it's the donkeys that have turned over the garbage. But there's so many layers to this, and I can see those owners, as you say, they really value love and care for they've elevated their donkeys to that level, as you say, of a horse, something that is of great value to them. And I just think instead of sort of pointing fingers, blaming the donkey, the lowly little donkey, it's such a part of Grahamstown's history. I think we're at a turning point. We can either choose, we have to choose to value and protect them.
Totally.
Moving forward, yeah.
And for more information, where do we go?
Am I allowed to give out my phone number, or what shall I do? Or they can just go to our website.
The website
or our Facebook page, our social media. We're very active on Facebook and Instagram. Those are possibly the best. Yeah.
So, because I've got www.blindlove.co.za and your socials?
It is Blind Love Africa is the Facebook one, and Instagram is blindlove.org.
Philippa du Toit, thank you so much for making time this afternoon. And have yourself
Thank you so much, Versa. Thank you. You too. Have a lovely day.
Same to you. Philippa,
all right.
Thank you. That's Philippa du Toit, founder of Blind Love Africa. Once again, you can go to the site www.blindlove.co.za for more information. Well, it's been a pleasure spending some quality time with you on The Full Circle. To my technical producer, thank you, and my content producers. Let's do this again sometime soon.
SAFM 104 to 107 nationwide, leading the conversation.
Thank you, Bertha and the team on the top stories. G20 Women Empowerment Meeting underway, and expert witness in Benenge case gives clarity on her analysis. For SAFM News, I am Ondilambana, and a very good day. The third technical meeting of the G20 on the empowerment of women is underway at Kruger National Park in Mpumalanga. It is aimed at promoting women's participation in the economy and their representation in the leadership, governance and decision-making. It is also aimed at enhancing women's ownership and control. Several G20 member states, along with invited countries, are participating in the 4-day engagement, which will conclude on Friday. Women, youth and persons with